Becca Rausch is a Democrat from Needham who has served 2 terms as state senator. She is running for re-election in a newly drawn district against 4-term Republican state representative Sean Dooley from Plainville. The new senatorial district includes towns of Bellingham, Dover, Franklin, Medfield, Milford, Millis, Needham, Norfolk, Plainville, Sherburne, and Rentham. Becca has an impressive list of accomplishments in her 2 terms as state senator. I first met Becca at the dedication of the Medfield Rail Trail. She's graciously agreed to be my guest on Special Times. Welcome, Becca.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here with you, and I really appreciate the invitation.
Thank you. You're welcome. What inspired you to run for state senator in 2018?
Well, I never planned to go into politics. I am a mom of 2 young kids. Both of them are under 10. Next term, if I am fortunate enough to continue serving and to be reelected to the state senate, I'll be the only mom of kids under 10 in the whole of the state senate. And I'm Jewish. We're raising a Jewish family, me and my husband, and I actually experienced some really direct anti-Semitism when I was young. My grandfather was a survivor of the Holocaust, so that really impacted me to kind of set me on a path of doing social good, making positive change in our communities. But I never, ever, ever planned to go into politics. I went to law school to learn how to use the law as a tool to make good things happen in our communities. But I was really encouraged to run by some neighbors, actually, for town meeting in Needham. We have representative town meeting in Needham, and so on the day the signatures were due, I ran all around the neighborhood, and I got, a dozen signatures and got on the ballot and was elected to town meeting in Needham, and I showed up prepared, because it never occurred to me to not show up prepared. And so I asked some questions, and I, had some comments, and really engaged in the process. And as a deep lover of grassroots democracy, it was really fun. I had a terrific time. And then after that very first meeting, at town meeting, a whole group of other people came up to me and said, "Who are you, and where'd you come from, and what else are you going to run for?" And I kind of looked over my shoulder. I thought they were talking to somebody else, but they were talking to me. And 6 months later, I was running for the Senate. And now that we're here, we've done so many good things in such a short amount of time, life-saving things, that have really tried to have actually, not just tried, but have actually improved quality of life, and also hopefully made it a little less expensive in all of the communities that I represent, and all of the neighborhoods and families and teachers and so we've small businesses. We've done some really great things, and that's why I'm running for re-election, to keep putting that proven leadership, that track record of success, to work for all of the people who live in this district and all 11 communities and local governments.
What do you consider your top accomplishments in the state senate?
There have been a lot, so it's really hard to pick. But I will say we've made some really significant advancements on reproductive rights. This is something that I was sent to the Senate to do, and something that I have delivered time and time and time again. We passed robust reproductive rights legislation before Roe v. Wade was overturned. It's the bill that made sure that people even had reproductive rights in Massachusetts. When the Supreme Court overturned Roe, I'm very proud to have championed that bill and made it stronger as it made its way through the process to becoming law. That's a stark contrast, actually, between me and my opponent. He voted against that bill repeatedly every time. And then this term, when we passed it after Roe fell, we passed additional reproductive rights protections legislation and gender-affirming care protections legislation, and I championed and authored several components of that bill. And that's a really important piece of the leadership that I bring to the table, of my legal acumen and depth of knowledge and expertise, particularly in this area. I would also say election reform has been a big piece of what we've done. We've got lots and lots and lots of people voting by mail. I wrote the 2020 Vote by Mail Act and have been a consistent, fervent champion for making sure that people have a meaningful access to our democracy and that everybody who has a right to vote gets to vote in whatever way makes the most sense for them. So we've done a lot of good in both of those areas and certainly need to keep going. I'll also say from a district perspective, this term alone, working collaboratively with local leaders and legislative colleagues, I brought back to the district over $25 million for our towns and cities and our communities for all sorts of local special projects, roads and bridges and water, infrastructure, senior centers, schools. Finally, we were able to make full-day tuition-free kindergarten happen for the town of Rentham, already talking with another town to be able to do that. And I started a small business advisory council that has already produced successful past legislation to make life easier on small business owners, really give them a boost. And also youth mental health, healthcare generally, but particularly youth mental health, which we know is exacerbated, especially recently. I created space to listen to young people through a revolutionary teen town hall, basically, which we've done on Zoom because we know how to use Zoom now. And so listening to them, taking their concerns and ideas, as we do on so many issues, and turning those ideas into results in a matter of weeks, I was able to work with some service delivery experts to create the first ever state-sponsored youth mental health support text line. It's called Hey Sam. It is up and running. Any young person anywhere in the state can text Hey Sam from anywhere. It is peer-to-peer, so they'll find another young person on the other side of that text. It's totally confidential. It is completely anonymous, and anytime people are feeling stressed, they can reach out and find, a non-judgmental ear on the other side of the phone. And that program is now fully funded with over $1 million state dollars. And that is a life-saving change. That my leadership and collaboration delivered for young people and families all throughout the district.
I could use something like that, I need a counselor, someone to talk to, because my last counselor didn't, I don't want to name names, but didn't work out, so.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Well, I'm sure we can help you find some resources.
If you are reelected, what will be your main priorities?
Lots of great things done and lots more work to do. Certainly on healthcare broadly, and that includes personal physical health, mental health, as we were just talking about, reproductive health, public health. We have lots and lots and lots of aspects of healthcare broadly, and we've made a lot of progress, but we have plenty more to do, especially to make sure it's affordable and people can get access to their prescriptions and and not break the bank on it. And as a mom of young kids, I'm acutely aware of how hard it can be sometimes to get to the pediatrician, right? So I've introduced legislation that has, made some advancements, but not yet over the finish line, to make it easier for people to get appointments with the pediatrician and for insurance to cover those important appointments. So healthcare is a really big one. Jobs and the economy, supporting our small businesses, right? Everybody's feeling that pinch right now. It's a tough economic moment. So really working and continuing the really successful collaboration that I've had with small businesses in the district and also with workers and working families all throughout all the district and all the communities that I represent and statewide to make our economy work, strengthen our local economies and make our overarching economy work better for everybody. And then climate. Climate is another really big piece. Right, we met at the rail trail. I'm the chair of the environmental committee in the Senate, and so we have, I have a really significant focus on climate action. I've already passed multiple pieces of legislation to protect the planet, and there's a lot more to do on that front as well. So those are three of the priorities that we've got.
Talk about the businesses and healthcare. Special needs people like myself, I've had interview offers for job companies that have wanted to interview me, but the problem is I can't get there for the interviews because sometimes my dad or someone like my agency that I don't want to say the name of, but my employment agency can't get me a person or a job helper to get me to the interviews.
The transportation, yeah. That's a significant challenge. Transportation is a challenge for, I think, almost everybody I talk to, and that's a lot of people.
And I just sit at home and do nothing all day but watch TV, and that's getting kind of boring for me. So
I can imagine, yeah. So we have some work to do there, don't we? About improving our transportation system, making sure that people with disabilities have transit options that are public transportation options, and that's actually something that I have been doing some work on in our district to secure funding for better local transportation resources. And this is kind of a big problem all throughout because some places have local transportation, some places don't. The systems don't talk to each other, right? So if you're in one region, you can't necessarily get to the other region. We have multiple different commuter rail lines in our district, and you can't get from one to the other without going all the way into Boston and coming all the way back out, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense either. So
I don't have a car to get
to
get to my job interviews. So.
Yeah. So we've got some real work to do there too, and I'll say, one of the strengths that I have brought to the table and will continue to bring to the table in the next term is listening carefully, working collaboratively to hear the concern, like the one that you just raised, and figure out how to turn those concerns into results. And we've done that time and time and time again, and I hope to continue doing that for this district as we look ahead into the next 2 years.
And now, in terms of healthcare, my Medicare and whatnot, they don't. Instead of like every year, I'm supposed to go to my doctor for an annual checkup. But now they call it a wellness visit.
Yep.
Because the state doesn't want to pay for the term checkup or anything like that. They changed the name all for it now to a wellness visit instead of the old name was physical exam or yearly checkup.
Yep. So Medicare is a federal program, so I'm not sure what the specifics are there, but a lot of times the names have changed, but the function when you get to the doctor's office is still the same. I will say though that we actually just passed that was spearheaded in the Senate that I was very proud to help move across the finish line, mental health legislation that will provide an annual mental health checkup also for people, and so that is just as important, and now we're going to have that.
As a special needs adult, the Department of Developmental Services (DDS) and the agencies they support have been an important part of my life. For example, I was in a day program at HMEA in Plainville in 2014 to 2015, and they gave me training and job support when I worked at Shaw's in Medfield as a state senator. How have you supported special needs adults and services providers in your district?
Yeah, it's a great question. When I was a kid, my mom actually worked for New York State Special Olympics, so I have long been an ally to the disability community and proud of that work. So I am actually a member of the Joint Committee on Children, Families, and Persons with Disabilities. We've advanced several bills out of that committee, some of which are not quite done yet, but have advanced, and those conversations are ongoing. And there are multiple pieces of legislation, but within our district specifically, again, that collaboration has been and listening carefully has been a really important piece of this puzzle. I've visited several service provider locations to see for myself what's happening on the ground and what's working, what's not working. Advocating for funding from the state level. Right, this is a partnership to be able to make sure we've got enough funds, and how services are being rolled out has changed a lot in the last 15, 20 years. So so we've definitely got some more work to do, but really listening carefully, working collaboratively, partly on the policy side and partly on the funding side, to be able to deliver those real results that are going to make a difference.
So in terms of DDS, I hope someday that my group home get the staff that work with me and my housemates in Rosendale, called Vinfant. I really do hope that someday that the state house will provide more funding for the staff so they can stay around for longer periods of time instead of being like always changing all the time and staff coming and going.
Our human service workers are consistently underfunded, and it's been an issue that has been certainly part of the conversation. I'm really proud to be endorsed in my reelection race by organizations representing those human service workers who are on the ground providing that work and that service. It's so important, and I remain here and hope to remain in the years to come here as your partner and your ally.
You ever want to talk to me and my dad about like sign holding or anything that you need help with? Just please ask.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
All through the state legislature in Massachusetts is strongly dominated by Democrats. We have often had Republican governors. Have you been able to work in a bipartisan way? Do you have any favorite people in the government, either Democrat or Republican?
I work with a lot of really wonderful colleagues, and I have absolutely worked in a bipartisan fashion a lot of the time. In my first term, actually, I passed 2 different maternal health bills. Both were passed unanimously, everybody in the Senate. And one of the other pieces that, and in fact, this term we also passed legislation that I lead filed with a member of the Republican Party, and we were able to move those bills along. And and that's really terrific collaboration. I often find that the points where we agree far outnumber the places where we disagree. And one of those places for me where I have found really great collaboration is on transparency in government. It's one of the things that has been super important to all the people that I represent, and one of the things I pledged to do and have done consistently throughout my tenure in the state Senate is to improve transparency. And I'm really proud of being a proven champion of improving and increasing transparency in the legislature on Beacon Hill. And that's a point where, when I first came into the Senate, often people would ask for votes on the record. You have to actually ask for that record to happen. And the people supporting that request would be all of the members of the Republican Party and me, the only Democrat. And that's cool, that's fine. I was okay to stand on my own. And lo and behold, just by standing up and supporting those requests for recorded votes, other people also started to stand up over time, and that has yielded a real shift, and I'm really proud of that.
The economy and the cost of living are critical issues both within the state and nationally. What legislative efforts do you see as critical moving forward?
So much. So we have so much to do, and so many things still in the hopper. We have an economic development bill, a really robust economic development bill that did not, unfortunately, make it over the finish line before the end of our formal sessions. But the legislature is still working on it. We just heard in the last couple of days that bill is again hopefully shortly on the move, and it's not so much a question of if, but rather a question of when that bill will be moving, and that has so much in it, right? Financial support for businesses and hospitals and community health centers, and also actually a tremendous amount of money for our district that I was able to secure personally. Millions of dollars for our district for special projects and infrastructure, both through direct authorizations and bond funding. And so hopefully we've got a lot riding on that bill, and that's a big deal. In fact, the piece of legislation that I was able to pass in collaboration with my Small Business Advisory Council was about improving access to state grant money, which has been it can be a really great resource for our business leaders and especially our small businesses, but it's not very easy to access. And so I passed legislation in the Senate version of that economic development bill to make that process a whole lot easier for our small business owners. And that's riding on this too. And so we definitely need that bill to come to the floor. We know we've got some tax relief directly coming, in the next few weeks when the administration, gets those checks out. And then we've got some longer term pieces to continue looking at that are going to hopefully make life in Massachusetts a little more affordable.
And I hope that someday that more businesses and the leaders of those businesses will want to hire people like myself who have special needs or disabilities, and because we could be just as good of workers as normal people.
Absolutely. And
that's important to me.
It's important to me too. It's a priority we share. And I actually was just at the opening of a new shop, a candy store actually in Milford, and all of the people working in that shop are individuals with disabilities. And we certainly have made some progress, and as with so many things, still have more work to do. And that's why I'm running for re-election, to keep being a good partner and keep delivering those results.
And my family have asked me to look in places like Dedham and whatnot for jobs, and I've applied everywhere near my group home, like the Dedham area and whatnot.
Yeah.
And I've used Indeed for that and to help me get jobs. And I've had a few interviews here and there, but no one's actually wanted to take me on board. So
well, we'll keep working on it.
It is what it is. My dentist and her office are strongly in favor of question 2. What do you think about the proposed restrictions on dental insurers?
So question 2, basically we'll do about dental insurance. We'll set some rules for dental insurance the same way that we already have rules for medical insurance. So medical insurance already has a requirement that a certain percentage of the dollars paid, our dollars, right, the money you and I and everybody else out there pays for our premiums, is actually spent on health care that we get. And that was a pretty good idea when it came to medical insurance. And so it makes sense to be able to apply that to dental insurance too. I think your dentist is making a good point.
What do you feel about question 1 and taxation in general?
So question 1, I'm really glad to have a chance to chat about question 1 because there's a lot of misinformation going around about it, including, unfortunately, from my opponent. Question 1 is about a millionaire's tax, and it's called a millionaire's tax for a reason, right? It doesn't apply at all until the millionth and first dollar. So that's a lot of dollars. And again, we're talking about not total gross income, but taxable income, right? And people who make that much money, a lot of it is not actually reported as taxable income. There are all sorts of things that get sort of written off. So it's really important to understand that that we're only talking about taxable income, and we're only talking about any income over $1 million, and then we're talking about a pretty small surcharge on top of what the existing tax rate would be on those dollars. And in fact, the Boston Globe, I think, did a really good job kind of setting out some examples maybe a couple of days ago, maybe over the weekend in the Sunday paper. But it's really important to understand the facts, right? We're not talking about inheritance. We're not talking about all sorts of other things. We're talking about reportable taxable income, and all of that money that all the additional funds, if it passes, right? If voters support it on the ballot in November, the money goes into the infrastructure of education and transportation, which are two of the big reasons why people live in Massachusetts in the first place, right? People come to Massachusetts for our schools, for our innovation, for our education sector. And people also, we all drive on the same roads, right? We all use the same public transportation if we can access it, and we've certainly got some work to do on that. And part of that work is about oversight, improving transportation oversight, as we've heard robustly recently. And so, we're going to get a different a different person who's running the transportation department shortly, and we're also going to have new oversight structure, or at least I'm going to be pushing for a significant new oversight structure. But we also know that we're going to need some investment, right? We were talking about local transportation a little bit earlier in this conversation. That's going to need money. The trains have literally caught on fire. People are jumping out the window. That's not going to work. So we need to have a transportation system that's going to support all of the people in our Commonwealth, and all the businesses in our Commonwealth, and and also all of our students and teachers and faculty that are in our Commonwealth. So it makes a lot of sense to to have that small additional surcharge on significant wealth. And I think it's also really important to mention that that additional surcharge still keeps Massachusetts pretty much right in the middle of the pack when you look state to state across the country in terms of what the tax rate is. So, it's still a pretty average tax rate. This whole idea that people are going to, flee the state, the data just shows that that's just not true. And again, it's only a small surcharge on any actual income that's over $1 million. So, I encourage people to check out that article from the Globe and really get the facts before you make a decision about question 1.
Do you have any concerns about election integrity in Massachusetts? Do you think anything should be changed or subject to increased scrutiny?
Mm-hmm. Our elections are secure. Voter fraud is not a thing. I get this question a lot, so I'm going to say it again. Voter fraud is not a thing. Our elections are very secure. Those things having been said, there are plenty of things that we need to do to improve the back-end infrastructure of our elections delivery, right? Some of the pieces of that infrastructure are decades old, and technology the world has changed. So we need some pretty significant advancements, but that doesn't change what I said at the beginning, which is that election fraud, voter fraud is not a thing, and our elections are secure. We also need to, I think, implement, mandatory minimum ballot drop boxes, so that when you take your vote by mail ballot and you want to drop it off, you can actually access a box, and improving our back end voter central registry of voters. Right, we've had for a really long time now tens of millions of federal dollars to get us in a better central registry place and really advance that technology and that infrastructure. And and that money it's just sitting there, not doing anything, even though we've had that money for a long time, and yet it still hasn't been implemented. The legislature has passed now multiple bills that would require the Secretary of the Commonwealth to join the interstate electronic voter registration hub, and he still hasn't done it. So we have many things that we need to do to improve, and it doesn't change the fact that our elections are secure and voter fraud is not a thing.
Before we close, any final thoughts or comments?
Well, I certainly want to thank you for having me, and thank all the wonderful people in Medfield that I have had such tremendous interactions with over the last many months, and I'm so looking forward to serving this town in the Senate as your senator in the term to come. I've already been able to secure real results for Medfield, even though I'm not technically your senator yet. But there's so much riding on this race. It is such a very critical election. And there's some really notable distinctions between me and my opponent. If you are concerned, you or any of your viewers are concerned about reproductive rights being ripped away, then I am your candidate in this race and proudly endorsed by Reproductive Equity Now and Planned Parenthood and Emily's List. If you're concerned about our climate and protecting our planet, then I am your candidate endorsed by every single environmental protection organization that has weighed in this race, both state and national. If you're concerned about youth mental health and strong advocacy for public schools and voting rights and protecting and strengthening our democracy, all of that and more, I am your candidate, right? Endorsed by the nurses, the social workers, the teachers, and more than 80 of our local community leaders and my partners in government, in local, state, and federal government. And so if people are considering in these last few days leading into the election for whom they should cast their vote in this election, if people want a proven, successful senator who delivers real results that make a difference in people's lives and in our communities, then I am your choice, and I would respectfully ask for your vote on or before November 8th. And thank you again for having me.
You're welcome. We want to thank Becca for appearing today on Special Times with Pierre Filosa. We recently interviewed her opponent, Sean Dooley, and you can also see that interview on Medfield TV. The election is coming up on November 8th. Early voting has already started. Please vote. Goodbye.